So, welcome to this training. This is the fundamental breakthrough training. I'm Trey Cross, founder of Cross 3 Network, and I wanted to make this training because there are a few people that are struggling to really get down the theory or the number system that's in this of the training that's going on. So I really wanted to break it down and step away from the keyboard for a second and like kind of give you a bird's eye view. So my goal and my objective at the end of this training is to make sure that you have a much better view and much better understanding of what the number system and what the theory is all about. Okay. All right. So here's a diagram right here. All right. So at the very top, in the mustard color, we're gonna start off with notes because that's the first thing you have to learn. Okay. So first things first, starting off with notes. Okay. And then right below that, we're gonna go into major scales. All right, in the red. So while we're in the red, just below, you see the letters C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C sharp, E flat, F sharp, A flat, B flat. Okay, so these letters right here and these square red boxes, they represent the all of the individual major scales. There are 12 major scales. And I did it like this because I wanted to make sure that you know and that you knew and that you could see that there are 12 notes and every single note has its own major scale. Okay? So, and with that being said, also making sure that you understand what a sharp and a flat is. So on the second row, you got C sharp, the number sign. Of course, we know the number sign is not a hashtag sign. It's not a number sign in music. It's a sharp sign. And then next to that, you have E, and it looks like a lowercase b. Of course, we know that's a flat sign. Okay. So the big takeaway from this should be every single note has its own major scale. All right. So moving on, going right below the red and going into the blue boxes. Now we have our chords. These are our basic chords. These are not all of the chords, but these are the basic chords. All right. So these are the main chords that we need to work on right now. All right. So right in the middle, in the blue, we have major chords. So major chords are very simple. They're very easy to understand. So what it is a major chord is always based on a major scale. So if you and then is in whatever major chord that you want to play, you go to that scale and you play the 1, the 3 and the 5 of that major scale. And as I progress, I'm gonna make sure that you really get this down. All right. So let's just say we wanted to play the C major chord. So if we wanted to play the C major chord, then we will play the C major, the 1, the 3, and the 5 of the C major scale. All right. So let's say we wanted to play the F major chord. We'll play the 1, the 3, and the 5 of the F major scale. Let's say we wanted to play the B flat major chord. Then we'll play the 1, the 3, and the 5 of the B flat major scale. All right. So, same concept with minor chords, except it's going to be the 1, the flat 3, and the 5. Okay. So what do I mean by flat 3? What does that mean? Flat means I always looked at it growing up. When you flatten, like a flat note means to bring it down or flatten it. So we know that if you're looking at the keyboard, you go to the right. If you go to the right of the keyboard, the notes go from low to high. So you go to the right, you ascend. If you go to the left, then you descend. So with that being said, you descend or you go down a half step. You flatten it. So flatten means to go down a half step. And if we were to raise it, we would sharpen it and we'll go up a half step. And that's going up. So a half step is one note going up or down one note with no notes in between. Okay? So let's say we wanted to play the C minor chord. C minor would be the 1, the flat 3, and the 5. So instead of playing the 1, the 3, and the 5 like we did with the major chord, we'll play the 1, the flat 3 instead of the 3, and then the 5. And the same thing with F, 1, flat 3, and 5. Same thing with B flat. And then diminished, with diminished, it's going to be the 1, the flat 3, and the flat 5. Okay? So that should be pretty self-explanatory. So if we played the C diminished chord, it would be, instead of C, E, G, it'll still be C. Instead of E, we're going to flatten the E, which is the 3, and it's going to go E flat. Okay, and instead of G, we're going to flatten the G, and we're going to go F sharp. Okay, so that's the same thing with E flat, A, all other keys. All of these chords, the minor chord, the major chord, the diminished chord, and then even when we get into other chords in the future, all of the chords, all these chords are based on the major scale. So that's why you have to learn your major scales first. So if you find yourself struggling to learn your chords, then you may need to go back and learn your major scales first. So that way you can really know your chords like the back of your hand. Okay. So, and then after we get past these three basic chords, we're gonna go down to, I guess it's lavender, to the inversions. Okay. So the root chord, which is right in the middle, right underneath the word inversion, the box inversions. The root chord is basically what you see in that major chord, the 1, 3, and the 5. So let's say we wanted to play the C major root chord. So C is the root note because that's the name of the chord. Okay. So if you're playing it right, then your thumb is going to be on the root note. Okay. And when your root note is going to be on the bottom. So let's say you're playing the C major root chord on your right hand. Your right thumb will be on the key of C. And if your right thumb is on that note, then you know that's the root chord. That's a good indicator. But the root, so here's the rule of thumb. The root note of the root chord is always on the bottom. Okay? So the bottom is always toward the left, the top is always toward the right. So the top of the chord would be toward your pinky, and the bottom of the chord would be toward your thumb on your right hand. Okay? So with that being said, the root note, the root chord, the C major root chord would be 1, 3, 5. Okay, the F major root chord will also be 1, 3, 5. Every single major root chord is 1, 3, and 5 of the major scale that you're playing, or of the major chord that you're playing. Okay, and so then we get into the first inversion. Okay, so the way inversions work, you can invert a chord as many times. You a chord can be inverted depending on the amount of notes that it has in it. Okay, so if a chord has 3 notes, then you can play the chord 3 different ways. If the chord has 4 notes, you can play it 4 different ways. If it has 5 notes, you can play it 5 different ways. That's how inversions work. So with let's say we played the C major chord first inversion. So then what we do with the C major chord first inversion, we take, instead of playing the C on the bottom, we'll put it on the top. Okay? So it's almost like you want to put that you want to put the root note first. That's how I remembered it growing up. So you want to put the root note first for the first inversion. So you put the root note at the top of the chord. Okay? And then for the second inversion, um for the second inversion for the major chords, and it, you're going to put the root note in the middle. So the way I look at it, I looked at this growing up is second inversion. Let's say we're playing the C major chord, second inversion. We will put the C in the middle because it's second. You get what I'm saying? So that's the second inversion. And this is the same thing for the D, for every single major chord: D major chord, F major, B flat major, A major. Every major chord, same thing. And this is the same exact concept you use for the minor chords. Same exact concept you use for the diminished chords. Okay? It's the same thing. This is very I hope I'm making this very, very clear. Okay? Alright, so let's get into the breakdown. Alright? So looking at the notes. Of course, in the white notes we have C through C. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and then C again. And then the black notes, just in case you weren't clear on the notes 100%. I normally teach for the black notes. You see the two black notes on the left. I normally teach C sharp and E flat. Now, if you see D flat and D sharp, it's not wrong, but I just don't teach it that way because that's just the way I grew up playing. And the three black notes on the right, I typically teach F sharp, A flat, and B flat. Now, G flat, G sharp, and A flat is not wrong. So, and the reason the black notes have two different names to them, remember when I was talking about sharps and flats? So that's basically what it is. A lot of times, to be technically right, theoretically or whatever, let's say we're going down, we're descending, and we're on D. So let's say we want to flatten the D, we'll call it D flat. Or let's say we're going up, we'll ascend, and we're on C, and we want to sharpen the C. So we want to go up from C, we'll call it C sharp. So that's why, and it's the same thing with F. To sharpen the F, we go to F sharp, or we can flatten the G, we'll go to G flat, even though it's the same note. So that's just that's why they have two different names. All right. Just in case, I just want to make sure you're 100% clear on this. Okay. All right. So next we are going to major scales. Okay. So remember when I said earlier, every note has its own major scale. There are 12 notes on the keyboard, and all 12 notes has its own major scale. So C has its own major scale. D has its own major scale. E, E flat, G, A, B. Every note has its own major scale. Now, here's the key. You absolutely have to learn each major scale. Just to jump ahead just a little bit. So when we go and learn, and by the way, if you look at these major scales, let's say we're looking at the C major scale on the top left. So right here I have the numbers listed. I'm sorry, I have the notes listed. So you have to learn the numbers. It's just 1 through 8, and it's all in order. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Or you could just look at it as 1 through 7 because 1 and 8 is the same. Okay. So make sure that you learn these. And the best way to learn them is to go back and do the scale drills and go and learn the chord progressions and just play the chord progressions in every scale. That's how you learn them. Okay? And another way to learn them is when you're playing songs, you're playing new songs, always know where you are. So when the song is going to the 5, know that you're going to the 5. When it's going to the 6, know that you're going to the 6. So when you keep doing that, you do that 100 times, you always remember that once if I'm in C, 7 is B. Okay? So know your numbers, know your scales. I just said the same thing, but you get what I'm saying. Make sure you know your major scales. That is absolutely important. Because if you skip this step and you don't learn your major scales, then you'll probably want to throw the rest of the program out the window because everything is based on the major scales. Okay? So let me know if you have any questions on this. Okay. So after we get through the major scales, now we are going to the major chords. So every there are 12 notes, like I said, and every note has its own major scale, and every note also has its own major chord. Okay? So this is a bird's eye view of all the major chords. All right? So right here I have them listed as with the letters and not the numbers. But I just wanted to give you a bird's eye view. Like it's 12 major chords, but look, once you learn your major scales, it'll be so easy. Super duper duper easy. Alright? Alright, moving on. Now we are going to the minor chords. So the minor chords is basically kind of like the major chord. Like I said, the only difference is instead of playing the 1, 3, and 5, you're playing the 1, the flat 3, and the 5. And every note slash scale has its own minor chord as well. Okay? And then we're going to get into the diminished chord. It's the same concept. Same concept with the major chord, same concept with the diminished chord. I mean, yeah, with the diminished chord, the minor chord, and the major chord. Same concept. Okay? The same exact concept. And then, see, with the diminished chord, like I said, it's really nothing special about it. It's really, I just can't stress enough that you have to absolutely have to learn your major scales. Okay? And last but not least, we have last but not least we have the inversions. So this is the C major chord. And this is what I was talking about earlier. You have the C major chord, the root chord at the top, C, E, G, which is 135. Okay, and then your first inversion. Remember, I said you're going to and look at the second chord. The first inversion, you're going to take the root note and put it at the top, so all the way to the right, which is the top. The right is the top, the left is the bottom. Okay, because you want to put the root note first, so that means the first inversion. That's a good way to remember. All right. And then the third chord is the second inversion. Remember, you're going to put the root note in the middle. All right. So I really hope I made this really clear. Please, I beg of you to ask any questions that you may have, and I will get with you as soon as I can. All right. Have a good one.